The Korean War was ended by an armistice, not a peace settlement, and the two Koreas are still officially at war. The armistice line runs along the 38th parallel, where there is a heavily fortified demilitarized zone, manned by American troops. Roughly 7,000 Canadians acted as military observers along the DMZ between 1953 and 1955. Since then, Canada has had good relations with South Korea, but North Korea remains isolated from Canada as from the rest of the outside world.
Most of the war diaries show that troops received news of the armistice with relief and guarded optimism. The Chinese and North Koreans had not given the UN much cause for celebration given the devastation wrought. And though both sides had moved their troops back from the DMZ, the potential for a renewal of the conflict was high. That's one of the reasons why the Canadians and other contingents maintained a presence on the peninsula until they thought it was safe to leave. So the Canadian presence on the peninsula diminished over time, with the last unit leaving in 1957, though Canada continued to play a role as part of the UNCMAC, as we do today.
The outbreak of the Korean War transformed the Cold War and caused massive rearmament by all the NATO allies, who feared communist aggression elsewhere. In Canada, defense spending doubled almost overnight, with most of it not for Korea, but for Europe, even while the fighting was still going on. Defense remained the biggest item in the federal budget into the early 1960s, sometimes reaching 10% of GDP.
Broadly speaking, Canada wanted to be shut of Korea when the war ended. It was, in terms of our foreign and military policy, a distraction from the main prize of the Cold War, which was in Western Europe, so the experience brought from Korea was applied to other, admittedly less hot, Cold War theaters. Canadians remained touched, though, by the plight of refugees and war-affected civilians in Korea, so most of the Canada-Korea relationship was marked by philanthropy and charitable donations by ex-soldiers and civilians alike. It would be more than a decade before Canada revisited its Korea policy and established diplomatic relations with South Korea, which reflected Canada's perhaps overlooked stake in the Cold War in the Pacific, as well as Korea's status as an emerging market.